Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have an amazing episode planned, and yes, I say this every time, and yes, I say that same damn phrase every time, but we have an amazing episode that we've put together. Tonight, we're going to talk about Trump and Sanders, the rally fights, protests, and how to address that type of a situation. We're going to be graced with the presence of Dan, and I'll call him Batcheldor, because I'm sure I butchered the shit out of that, but his name is Dan Batcheldor. He's got a PhD in astrophysics. He's a scientist, and he wrote a book called Astronomy Saves the World. We're going to also talk about GMO issues. We have a very fun article called Responses to Popular Anti-GMO Rhetoric from the Scientific Atheist. And it's a light read. It'll be kind of funny. And then we're going to end with Hannah's spin on how to teach the controversy, because he decided he wants to start teaching the controversy in his local arena. So we got to address this, because I think that Hannah might be turning into a creationist, even though we just talked to a scientist the same night.
Oh, he converted me back to science. We're in good shape, but we'll still talk the controversy anyways.
But we still got to talk the controversy. But as we begin the show and we talk about all the different things going on in our lives, and we're very blessed to be here this week. You know, Hannah and I both had a very aggressively heavy work week. Neither one of us had the ability to take much time for ourselves. And so we when we put these things together and we do this, we're doing this because our goal is to bring as much information as we can to everybody. And we like what we do. We do this as kind of a hobby type thing. We hope we bring some important information to you, and we hope you challenge us. So if you have any thoughts or comments, you can tweet at us at cellardoorskep. You can send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. You can find us both on Facebook, as well as you can find us on Spreaker.
And we're on Pinterest, and we're on Tumblr, yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff you can find us running around on the internet. Just about any major page. We haven't gotten into some of the smaller ones, the new and up-and-coming social networking pages, because we can't spend all day long just on social media. It's if I had millions of dollars and this was, a full-time gig, yeah, maybe. But for right now, we're gonna hit the main ones, and we'll try to interact as much as we can. But I mean, it's fun, and we love going through this stuff, but we're not gonna hit every single one.
Yeah, and before we get into this, I'm going to post this link in the description. And I know last week we plugged a GoFundMe for our friend Mike Phelps, and I love the guy to death. But we have another GoFundMe we want to plug, and this one hits a little closer to home. Recently, there was a shooting in Kalamazoo, and right now the hats are off as to what it was. There was a gentleman that went around. He was an Uber driver, and he randomly shot people. And I remember when the story broke, because I'm sitting here locking my fucking door, and I live an hour away, because nobody understood, nobody knew what was going on. But we had a bunch of victims, and the majority of them passed away. But there was one in Kalamazoo, and they actually kept this young girl's name private, and so I didn't know who she was, what it was, or any of that. And all of a sudden, about earlier this week, we have a mutual friend on Facebook named Gene, and it's his daughter. His daughter was one of the shooting victims. And I didn't know this, and I messaged him. I said, "Hey, can I share your GoFundMe? Can I send this to our listeners? Can I send this to the people on my Facebook? Because this is amazing. I mean, I hate gun violence with a passion. What I hate more is the fact that children are hurt. And if there's one thing that we can fucking agree on, whether we agree with why the symptoms that cause this, whether we agree with any of the different issues that are going on right now, we have to at least acknowledge that children should not be hurt.
Or any child that is hurt, we should all get together. Pro-gun, anti-gun, pro-whatever, anti-whatever, that we should help the kids first, and then we can have our conversation, we can work on our laws or whatever.
Yes.
Like, we don't need to leave bodies of innocents in the wake of our political discussion. These are things that don't need to happen. There's no such thing as good collateral damage.
And I agree. And so I don't want to spend, 2 hours talking about this, and I don't want to turn this into another pro-gun, anti-gun, let's talk about the consequences type show, because I heard enough about my stance on guns. But I want to plug this GoFundMe for a friend of ours, a good friend, in the atheist community up here named Gene Cuff. And if you can, please go donate, help his daughter, because there is extensive medical costs to her recovery. But she came out of her coma. She's doing really well, and she's up here in Grand Rapids at the Children's Hospital.
Are we gonna put this in our description box?
This will be the top link in the description box. Okay. And I can't say this enough. If you have the means to donate and you don't live around here, please help them out. They do not have the ability to cover all the funds, and we don't have universal health care yet, so I don't know what else to tell you. Unfortunately, we have to fund things this way. When we get universal health care, we won't have this fucking problem anymore, but until we get that explicit tag on, we have to help those in need. And this person has touched my life in a meaningful way, and I want to help give back. So if you have the means, you have the ability to do this, please head over to the GoFundMe link in the top of the description and ensure that you help out any which way you can, even if it's a share. A share helps. But enough about the gun violence, because we have to talk about another type of violence, right? I mean, fuck, we don't want to talk about gun violence. We got to talk about Trump violence. We got Trump violence. We got Bernie Sanders violence. What the fuck's going on, Chris? What is going on? Why are all these rallies blowing up now? And why are we hearing about all these violent tendencies?
The only thing I can think of is that we're getting to a more polarized political community. This everybody's getting sick and tired of the establishment. How basically money is the buyer. It's a payola scheme. I don't know if you're familiar with payola. Back in the day, you used to have to pay money to the DJs to get your music played. Well, now you have to pay money to the politicians to get your perspective or whatever put out, and laws, and it's a pay to play. It's buy a subscription to your favorite politician, and this is the establishment. People are getting so disenfranchised by this that they're getting more and more active. But what we're getting people who are so active, so frustrated, that we're getting these really, really left and really, really right, angry people who have never been involved in the political system because they've been so pissed off for so long. Well, now there's a viable option for them. When I say viable, I mean that very loosely when I have to talk about Donald Trump. But there's a viable option on both ends of the spectrum: the anti-establishment right, the anti-establishment left. And these people are, let's face it, they're new to the thing, or some people are attaching themselves to these new movements, and they're going even further right, even further left than they ever have, and it's resulting in violence. It's resulting in protests that collapse into just utter chaos and some pseudo riot situations. It's been pretty sad that things have deteriorated as they have.
Yeah, and so I found a couple of different articles that I wanted to discuss. And before we get into the where and the how, President Obama released a statement this week where he basically decried and said we need to stop all this violence. And in a minute, we could talk about what the violence is. We could talk about where it comes from. We could talk about all these different things. But I think it's interesting because this article actually posts, and it talks about how Obama actually used kind of similar fear tactics that, Trump used. And maybe it's unfair, but President Obama campaigned, and he said, I'm going to bring a gun to the knife fight during his campaign. He used some of these different types of rhetoric. And I think it's interesting because we can stop and we can look at it. And I'm a big Obama fan. I mean, I voted for him twice. I do support not all of his politics. He's not socialist enough for me, I guess. But there's some aspect to this that we have to look at. There's some things that we have to understand and say, hey, what's going on, right? So, Chris, I don't know, I know this is a recent article, but basically what it talks about is how Obama actually used this in his campaign against John McCain. And what's your take on what Obama said, and what is your take on? And I mean, we are talking a little bit different theories here. We have Trump, who's not just said this once or twice, right? He's not just tried to somewhat incite violence once or twice. I mean, he degrades women, he degrades minorities. I mean, he's, to a point, in my fucking opinion, he's a goddamn racist. And some of me wants to say is there has to be a difference, but let's take the skeptical view. Let's step back, and if we took the two and put them next to each other, do you feel if Obama uses vicious language that it's similar to some of the language that Donald Trump has used?
I do, to a certain degree, yeah. One of the things that one of my favorite writers, Christopher Hitchens, has talked about is in certain campaigns, you're going to see things like the reduction of campaigns in the near future to just some meaningless, absurd word. This one word that describes everyone's perfect campaign. We saw things like hope and change, and one of my favorites for graffiti artists is the Andre the Giant Obey. And all those kinds of things, we're basically reducing an entire campaign, an entire movement into a single word. And so politics up until today, up until recently, has been this marketing scheme. It's been a series of marketing and I guess public persona and PR people who have been trying to create the perfect machine to try to feed into an established politic situation, and so the people would just consume it like a commercial. And so it does not surprise me that Obama in the past, as well as Bush and Clinton and any of those people who have ever run really for a major office like this, have used these same kinds of things to bring a gun to a knife fight. President Obama has been an incredibly moderate president. He's been hawkish as hell when it comes to what he's done with drone warfare, and we expected him to remove all of the troops from Afghanistan. Well, we've seen some changes, and he's actually instigated some new stuff in Syria. Like we're seeing a very moderate president. He's done some very progressive things with the Affordable Care Act, but he's not this leftist monster that the right would have us believe. He's in the middle, and he says things that, let's face it, the people in the middle with some tendencies towards the centrist would say. He's not this perfect martyr or this perfect pacifist. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's saying things like bringing guns to a knife fight. And Trump obviously goes further and directly assassinates people and attacks people that way, which is why he is disgusting and horrible and hairless, let's face it.
Well, and this article ends, and I disagree. It is from the Washington Times, so they're probably a little bit more of a conservative magazine. But what I want to point out, though, is at the very end, Obama says this. He says, "Animosity breeds animosity," and this is also about the American brand. Why would we want to see the brand tarnished? The world pays attention to what we say and what we do. And then he looks at, Paul Ryan, the Wisconsin publican. And this was at a dinner that they were both at, or I think it was a lunch, actually, not a dinner. But he says, "We may disagree on politics and policies, but I don't have anything bad to say about you as a man. I know you want the best for America, whether we disagree or not." And later on, he goes to basically say that sometimes I would like to recall some of the words, and that we might regret some of the things that we say. And certainly I can, and while some may be more to blame than others for this type of a climate, all of us are responsible for reversing it. So he does come out and kind of say, well, you know what, those are some dirty tactics, and he's a moderate. And we talked last week about whether we want to see Bernie take super PAC money if he does beat Hillary. I don't think that it's as much of a winnable case as it used to be. I don't think it was as much of a in-the-bag thing as what we used to think it was. But there's still a pretty good chance that Bernie will become the nominee. And we can still remain hopeful and portray the facts. But the big thing there is Obama took ownership of his mistakes and said, they are mistakes. Don't put me up on a pedestal, but I'm going to apologize for them. And I think that's to me, that's pretty big. That's something that I can at least respect, especially in a community that has a hard time apologizing for things.
Yeah, well, let's face it. We're not going to see an ego with a pantsuit on like Trump. You're never going to see him do any kind of apology of any kind. He's the kind of person who will dig down deep and entrench himself in something so absurd and ridiculous before he would apologize. He's just an ego trip like that, and that's the kind of thing that scares us because you gotta have some kind of malleability. He doesn't like Muslims. Block them all from the country. He doesn't like Mexicans. Build a fucking wall. This is the rhetoric and the tantrums that a child throws, much like Marco Rubio threw when he bowed out of his presidential campaign is like, I'm going to quit politics completely. Yeah, great, pal. Whatever. If you can't handle fire, just get on out of here. And Trump isn't the kind of person with any kind of humility or any kind of ability to compromise and commiserate. And he's not the kind of person that could be a good leader, because that's part of it. You have to be able to say, listen, I made a mistake. I have not been perfect. And Obama has made some strides for that, like you said, like you just read his quotation. So that's heartwarming. It makes me feel a little bit better for voting for him. But it doesn't erase the things that he's done that I don't agree with. But hopefully the next presidency, we can see some progress in a forward direction.
And so let's move on to what was said, because we do have to address, we do have to address Bernie a little bit, right? We cannot just move past both these candidates. And it's very easy to pick on Trump. I'm sorry. I mean, we already talked about what's going to happen for 6 months if he gets the Republican nomination. I mean, we've got 2 hours of show material every week because I don't even know what to say about Trump sometimes.
It's like comedians were saying that people kept asking him that when President Bush once he's left office, what are they going to talk about? And it's like, you don't understand. He makes my job incredibly easy, but it's not like I'm going to lose anything to talk about when he's gone. Like, American politics doesn't become this amazing, perfect machine overnight when the idiot at the top gets knocked off. Well, the same thing will happen if Trump gets the nomination or doesn't get the nomination. We'll still be able to critique the GOP and whoever their top person is, but we can also critique the Democrats as well.
And so let's look at Trump a little bit, because we're going to get to Bernie and we'll close with the Bernie thing. But because I am going to give Bernie shit this time. I mean, I don't agree with some of what he said, and I don't agree with some of what he's been absent on, and I don't agree with the way the demonstrations went in Chicago. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. And I've been involved in many protests. I mean, I'm not somebody that's never been to a protest before. I've been to a protest. I've been to a very heated protest less than a year ago, when we had a very conservative, pro-gun, kill the gays type speaker who's been infiltrating fucking schools for years and years and years and years with his abstinence bullshit come to my town. And it was very hard for me to see this, but I wouldn't stand out there with a gun and pointing at him and be like, you ain't coming in, motherfucker, I wouldn't be out there pushing people saying, screw you, you guys all suck, we're going to kill you, I wouldn't do that. So I disagree with some of the rhetoric on the Bernie side, but to begin with, we have to look at the Trump rallies, and we do have to look at what happens and what's being portrayed from the podium. And sometimes I think Trump's just like a stream of conscious, he's just like a brain in a vat that's just pumping information. Or maybe he's one of those aliens from The Simpsons, that come and inhabit the bodies, and he's just like, oh, I'm blorka blork.
I would make him a little bit more attuned to, if you can imagine, a small computer with a limited ability to make a certain set of responses based on any type of one simple thing. Like when some relatively related comment, you push the button 1, and a different topic, button 2, like just canned responses. He doesn't have any ability to really think on his feet, and so you just get the same thing: build a wall, knock him out, lock him out. Like, he doesn't have real responses. It's more just kind of this vague response to one simple topic over and over again.
And if we review some of his speeches, Trump basically talks about the old days, right? He talks about how things used to be and how they were, rough guys, and that sometimes being forceful is a beautiful thing. And he talks about this. I mean, he basically told somebody, while laughing and smiling at a protester, that he wanted to punch that person in the face. Now, you're right. He didn't do that. It wasn't like Trump standing out there hitting people. And if you listen to Not Another Atheist podcast, you'll kind of get some of that New Yorker from Jen and some of the Canadian perspective from Keith, and you get the kind of the two to mix, right? But they talk about it. They talked a little bit about politics last time, and Jen told a story about how basically she had to be late for work because of Trump. And, she got made fun of a little bit because that's the only reason she's not voting for Trump. That's pretty shitty. But, it kind of put an impression on her. And what she was trying to express, and what she was saying is that I was late because Trump was getting a fucking coffee and having a conversation, and because, he's a protected person and a high public profile, all the streets filled, and New York's crowded enough. Trump had no consideration for his fellow man. He only gave a flying fuck about himself. That's all he gave a shit about. And so he wants to claim that Bernie's the reason that the rally in Chicago got canceled. He wants to claim that he doesn't say anything or he doesn't do anything, to do that. He even claims that he lowered the temperature of these rallies. He claims that he's like the calm factor in the rallies. And it makes no sense because, on February 1st, one of the things he said was, so if you see somebody getting up to throw a tomato... knock the cap out of him, would you? Seriously, okay, just knock the hell. I promise you, I'll pay for the legal fees. I promise. On February 16th, he said this. All right, thank you. Who is that person who stood? That was so great. Who is that person that did that? Put your hand up. I want to... Come on, bring that person up here. I love blah, 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 unintelligible bullshit. Come on up here. You're so amazing. And he makes fun of people.
He ripped up a sign of a protester. Like the guy someone stood up with the sign, and this guy ripped the sign up. So Trump basically gave that guy praise for tearing up someone else's protest sign.
He said on February 22nd, he said this, he says, I love the good old days, you know what I hate? There's a guy, total disruptive, throwing punches. We're not allowed to punch back anymore, but I love the good old days. What they do to the guys like that is... When they were in a place like this, they'd be carried out on stretchers, folks. He's walking out like big high fives and smiling. I'd punch him in the face. Now, look, he didn't punch somebody. He didn't get off the stage and punch somebody. And in a minute, we're going to address the Bernie people because some of this Bernie shit is just fucking irritating and it makes me look stupid and it pisses me the fuck off. But when you look at it, right, dude, Trump, if you listen to this ever in your spare time for running for president, you're to a point you're instigating. You're not telling people, hey, stop being violent. You're basically passive aggressively fucking complaining about it. Shut the fuck up, for Christ's sake. You have a little bit of humility. Say, hey, you know what? Even if be like Jesus. Didn't you claim to believe 2 Corinthians or something like that?
You read 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians? You believe 2 Corinthians? Be a little bit more like Jesus and turn the other fucking cheek. Tell your supporters to turn the other cheek. And I guarantee you, if you turn the temperament down, you put the fucking guns away, you stop trying to, ban Muslims and put walls up, at some fucking point, people are going to go, okay, we don't need to be violent. We don't like you, but we're not going to hit you or hurt you because they ain't going to do anything.
All I know is that someone who's been as pampered for as long as Trump has been, he's a draft dodger as well. He magically had some kind of bone spur, so he didn't have to go to war in Vietnam. Yeah, he's just whatever. And so, like, if someone came up to him and actually hit that pampered big ass idiot, I guarantee you he's not punching back. That guy's probably as soft as the Play-Doh factory. He's so. But anyways, I agree 100% with what you're saying. Is that he is inciting, he is pushing buttons, and he is using it. So essentially, there's no such thing as bad publicity, and that is his marketing campaign. Like, I'm going to talk and be as crazy as I can and try to get people so pissed off that they jump up and they incite, because there's no such thing as bad publicity. Trump gets talked about 24/7. They start a fire at a rally. They burned, the place down. They fight people in the streets. They drag out. They actually beat up and drag black people out of his rallies, and he gets nothing but talked about on the news stations. And it's not like, holy crap, there's a pile of racists beating the crap out of minorities. It's, there's minorities that are protesting inside the Donald Trump campaign, and so they deserve it in some way, shape, or form. And I know we'll talk more about Bernie on the other end, but like he's not getting the negative publicity, these negative connotations, these negative actions, and frankly, I call them, it's unethical and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that that's considered like a person of character that we should emulate. Donald Trump, who's acting so childishly all the time. So that's the temperature at these rallies that I see as, essentially it's just disgusting. And the rest of the world, and you look at the videos from the UK and those kinds of things, you can see the rest of the world kind of like, seriously, this is really happening. You guys aren't messing around. This is some kind of world troll that you're doing here. And I wish this was a big fucking joke. I really do. But as this thing goes on, the GOP's monster, the Frankenstein story, Mary Shelley's rolling in her grave with this thing. And we'll see what happens in the near future if these rallies get any more peaceful.
And I'll be honest, there's some aspects of the Bernie supporters that I don't like. I don't like the let's go onto the stage type thing, where let's yell inside of the arena. To a point, Trump has a right to have his safe space, I guess, if you want to call it. He has a right, if he wants to be racist, if he wants to yell at people, if he wants to be a pathological liar, which is what Bernie called him, he has that right to have that space. Let him have it.
Yep.
I don't think that, especially if he's paying for the arena. So, like, if Trump came into my house and walked into my house and I was like, hey, you be here, it's free, and everything started getting violent, and I was like, no, get the fuck out now. Get the fuck out of my house. And honestly, folks, I would never fucking invite Trump to my house. I couldn't handle being in the same room with him. But if that happened in that scenario, in that hypothetical scenario, and I pushed him out of the house and I was like, okay, get out now. He didn't pay me to be here. He has no right to be in my house. Yeah, I invited him, but he doesn't get to stay. He doesn't get that. But if Trump goes to an arena and pays his fair price, or in that aspect, the people have a right to come see him. And I think that this disruptiveness is bothersome. It's bothersome that we have to see these people getting up on stage. And I get it. Trump's a piece of shit. Fuck Trump. If Trump becomes president, we got material for this show for fucking years on end. But
if we're not all campaign and quarantine.
If we're not all dead. Yeah, if we're not all, we're atheists. We'll probably fucking be dead by then.
Yeah.
But the big fucking problem, the big issue here is that stop bum rushing the stage. Yep. Stop doing that. Stop screaming to overtalk Trump. Why would you do that? He's going to say it. You're not going to change his mind that way. And there's some aspects, that I support. There's some aspects of that we would look at and we would call protesting that I do support. And there's certain situations that I do agree with it in. In this situation, it almost feels like there's a edge, and people are hugging that edge to incite violence. And I almost want to say hold on, is there a big reason to do this? Yeah. If we look at Ferguson, right, and we look at the riots that happened, I actually supported those riots in some aspects, right? I don't agree with the violence in any way, shape, or form, but I understand it. I understand the temperature. I understand the fact that at some point, if you stick somebody in the corner and hit them with a stick for so long, no matter what they do, they keep getting hit with a stick. At some point, they're going to fucking strike back. At some point, they're going to go, hey, folks, grow up. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're treating me as a second-class citizen. But Trump hasn't gotten in yet. Yeah. Trump hasn't won the nomination. There's talks of Trump not even getting the nomination. And I'm saying let's go outside and stand outside of his arena and protest. I support that. You want to stand outside and protest? No issues. Should you be maced? No. Should you be pepper sprayed? No. Should you be beaten and thrown in jail? No. But let's stop running up on stage. Let's stop screaming at the top of our lungs to stop him from speaking. Let him say his hateful speech. It's not going to change anything. Let's go out. Let's vote. And let's make a difference on Election Day, whether we're Bernie or Hillary fans or O'Malley fans. And let's get out and make sure that fucking Trump does not get in. There's more Democrats in here and independents in the United States than there is Republicans. Let's stand up and vote and say fuck no to Trump. Maybe I'll get that shirt, Chris. Maybe I'll get a shirt that says fuck no Trump.
No, there's a bunch of different shirts and a bunch of sayings, a bunch of hashtags that are going around for no Trump, absolutely no Trump, and not even once Trump, blah, blah, blah. All of these things, the anger, the rage, the disgust that we're seeing from this, like you said, this guy is not even a candidate yet. He has not got a nomination. And so from my perspective, I want the world, I act as I want the country and the world to be. So if I was having a rally, let's say I'm going to the Bernie Sanders rally in Grand Rapids, and people come in from the Trump campaign and they sneak into the middle, and then they just get up and act like complete horses' asses in the middle of this rally of just like-minded people who are all there to hear the person they like speak. Those Trump people are giant horses' asses, and they should be removed. I don't think that they have a place in there. They can protest all they want, but they're disrupting basically freedom of speech and my freedom of speech to purchase a ticket to see someone that I like. And so the same consideration goes in the other direction. That's something that a lot of progressives have a hard time with. Is I hate to say it, but freedom of speech works towards bigoted assholes, and they're allowed to talk too. And so I completely agree with you. Protest outside, but I wouldn't even protest outside a non-candidate yet. I would protest maybe when he is the actual candidate and we're talking debates, but while he's just trying to get the nomination, don't give him any more airtime than he deserves. Just Just completely ignore him. You can attack him online and whatever, but don't spend the time, don't spend the effort trying to, because he's all it's doing is increasing his presence. It's increasing his notoriety. And so, I mean, that's basically what I would say. And so the Bernie Sanders supporters who are doing this, we need to reduce that. We need to reduce that, this lowering ourselves down to this violent, hateful rhetoric and to act like the people that we want this country to be acting like. So the Bernie Sanders people that you said you're going to slam, I'm assuming your perspective is the same way. It's we need to be doing things to help our cause and help our nominations and our candidates versus attacking openly and acting like idiots in the streets. Or at least in the rallies, anyways.
Yeah, let's stop bum rushing the stage.
Yeah,
let's stop standing in the street when the police tell us to get off the middle of the street. Let's stop blocking traffic. It's not the end of the world yet. Maybe soon.
Yes.
Maybe soon.
You're scaring me,
It's
man.
not.
You got some kind of premonitions that we don't know about yet?
No. No way in hell do I get premonitions. I don't believe in that shit, Chris.
That
but
works.
As we wrap this segment up and we walk away from this, the one thing that I want to leave you with, and this is the one thing that this is what stuck out to me out of the whole articles. Out of all the research I did, Trump said this. He said, they want me to tell my people, please be nice. Be nice. My people are nice. But they're taunted. They're harassed by these other people. And I'm saying if they aren't punching them, they don't have a right to punch back. If I walked up to somebody and screamed in their face, you're a piece of shit, at the top of my lungs, they don't have a right to hit me. At some point, I can be an instigator, but at some point, if I'm not violently attacking you, you don't have a right to violently attack me back. We should work towards more police enforcement. We should work towards the police coming in and saying, okay, that situation right there, you're screaming at the top of your lungs in that person's face. Yeah, you should probably be removed because that's inappropriate. It doesn't give people free fucking reign at a Trump rally to start punching people. It doesn't give them free reign to take their biases out. You know, there was that old guy that hit the black dude in the face, right?
Yeah.
Fuck that dude. You are a piece of shit old white guy that's a racist as hell, and you just used that as a goddamn reason to hit a black person in the face. That's all you did.
Security was escorting him out. This dude was walking through the aisle, like trying to intersect, and as soon as they bam, sucker punch. It wasn't even like a legit punch.
No reason.
Yeah.
No reason for it. And then the security guards treated him like the black guy like shit afterwards, and I disagree with that too. But we can't go off on a Black Lives Matter tangent specifically now. Maybe at the end of the show we can, because I do support Black Lives Matter, and I can't imagine why those cops and security people aren't being charged. It makes no sense to me.
I don't either.
That dude was non-violent. There's no reason to harm that individual. That dude should be put on a pedestal and say, "Hey, look, that guy left when he was told to." You know?
I'm pretty sure the old guy was arrested as well.
That guy was arrested. The old guy got arrested.
Yeah, so
he's being charged right now.
We've got those kinds of things that are going through or whatever, and it all comes down to it's like my favorite protests that I've ever seen in the history of protests are the civil rights activist protests from Dr. Martin Luther King. The peaceful protests, you know, we will overcome, the brotherhood of man type things like those. Let's face it, Bernie Sanders was walking in them, but like those kinds of things, to me, that brings goosebumps to my arms. Be able to stand there and take the hateful rhetoric and not lash back to show that you're the better person in a situation. That is what I would strive towards myself, and I would hope that our group would, and that our political wing, if you're going to be Hillary or Bernie, just progressive, Democrat, whatever, if we're going to be on the left side like this, we need to act like the people we want the rest of the country to be like, and take the moral high ground and just refuse to act like they want, you know, violence and anger. And so that is the only thing I can say. This whole situation for the temperature and everything is that we need to be a little bit more conscious of what we're doing.
Well, Chris, you know it's bad when people in your own party are calling you toxic. Donald Trump has created a toxic environment, and a toxic environment has allowed his supporters and those who sometimes seek confirmation to come together in violence. Presidential hopeful candidate Kasich, who told supporters in Ohio on Saturday, if your own party's against you and telling you you're a little bit toxic, maybe you should take a hint from that. Please stick around, because we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics, and we'll be talking with a gentleman who has worked with NASA. We'll be right back, everyone.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Hi, this is Sharon Bush, newest and most badass host of the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around through an amazing first segment. We have a treat tonight. We have a real scientist. You don't have to listen to Chris Hanna go on and on and on about his science tonight. We actually brought somebody that has a PhD that's well over our heads into the mix tonight. I would love to introduce Daniel Batcheldor, and he is the head physics and space sciences over at Florida Institute of Technology. He comes to us with a whole bunch of experience. We're talking like a page long worth of experience. And of course, what we'll do is we'll link all his information into the description. But just a brief description of what he's done is he's created this new book, or is working on creating this new book called Astronomy Saves the World. And I actually heard him on Seth Andrews' podcast, and I was like, holy crap, started checking out his book and his Kickstarter account and saw that this seems to be an amazing idea. And I said, well, what's better than science education than bringing the actual author onto the show? So if you'll all give me a warm hand welcoming Dan to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Awesome. And we do consider this a privilege, just so you know, to have somebody of your caliber on the show. Because a lot of times, people look at our show and they just kind of go, okay, it's a skeptic show, and we pride ourselves on the science side. That's kind of what Hannah used to do. I did the atheist thing, Hannah did the science thing, and we said, well, what if we mix the two together? What if we put both sides together and try to combine it into a little shorter show than I used to have? And when I heard about your book and what you were trying to do, I immediately thought of my kids. And what you're trying to do is bring science to a level that some of us that don't have PhDs and haven't spent 12 years or more in school, to an understanding. And what better topic for me than astronomy? I love anything to do with outer space. That's my favorite science topic besides evolution. So, and you can tell Hannah, he 100% will tell you, I'll talk about evolution every day of the week, but when it comes to astronomy and anything in the galaxy, I'm in awe of, the amazingness of it.
And you're not alone. You're not alone in thinking like that. There's loads and loads of people I meet all the time that say exactly what you just said, and that's the type of enthusiasm that I recognize and want to kind of harness and talk to in the book, because there's a lot of people out there looking for more information, and you can browse Wikipedia pages all you like, but if you're looking for the very specific stuff that gets all of the attention from the religious establishments, the things like the shape of the Earth, the position of the Earth in the universe, the birth of the universe itself, the age of the Earth. These are all the things that people regularly ask me questions about when they are trying to come up with the counter arguments against some of the stuff that the religious people ask them when they're having these conversations that people so much like to have.
And so before we get going on the book and everything that's going on with that, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what led you into this field? I always like to know people's background. I like to know what inspires people. I mean, we can all admit that, yes, it's an awe, but there's also got to be little other factors, things that you enjoy about this field that drew you to the field.
So, yeah, when I was about 12 years old, I got bought it's kind of a cliche, right? I got bought a telescope by my grandfather, spent hours and hours and hours setting it up. It was a real pain in the neck. Eventually got to see Saturn and its rings for about 5 seconds and was like, this is cool. And I've always been into science fiction, so Star Trek, Hitchhiker's Guide, Star Wars, Isaac Asimov. The Foundation series was the first series of books that I read from cover to cover without stopping, in the order that they were published as well. Not yes, you see, that's the way to do it. And to be honest, it wasn't really until I got to the point where I was looking at what degrees I could do at university that it really dawned on me that you could do this for a career. So I kind of floated through high school, right? I didn't like the arts. I didn't really like the humanities. Really liked the maths and the physics. I wasn't really that good at it at high school either, because I just hated the way I was being force-fed information, and I kind of rebelled against it a little bit. So in my junior year at high school, they give you a survey, right? And the survey is, answer these questions, we'll tell you what career you should have. So I answered the questions, and at the top it said astronomer, and I was like, all right, I'll do that at university. And kind of
career out of like a survey.
Yeah. So I applied. I got my place. It worked well for me. I graduated top of the class and everything, and then went on to do the PhD, and then moved over to Rochester in upstate New York, much closer to you guys than I am right now, when I finished my PhD, and worked up there for about 6 years before coming down to Florida to take a faculty position down here.
Mm-hmm. So when you moved into Florida and you took a faculty position, what was kind of the driver for Florida? I mean, is that, and you'll have to forgive my ignorance, but is that specific school like one of the top schools? Is this something where a lot of people flock to? What was the draw to Florida Institute of Technology?
So after about 3 or 4 years past your PhD, you kind of start looking for a permanent job, right? Because when it's called postdoctoral work, right? When you're doing postdoctoral work, you kind of jump around from job to job to job. You don't really settle down. So I was looking for faculty positions because it was just the next thing to do. Florida Tech, I'd never really heard of it. It was the first job opportunity that came up. I applied for it and kind of was surprised when I got offered the position, and didn't really think about it. It was a permanent job. It was 2010. The economy was collapsing. My wife and I wanted to settle down, buy a house, start a family. It was a no-brainer. When I got to Florida Tech, I realized, oh, holy crap, this place is right next to the Kennedy Space Center. It was founded essentially to help NASA train the scientists that went on to successfully land humans on Earth, on the Moon. The program that we have here is one of those programs that students come to if they want to go and work for NASA, or if they want to go and work for the private space industry, like SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or companies like that. Yeah, so we have a lot of aerospace and mechanical engineers here as well that we work with. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. I had a buddy that he didn't go to the school, but he went down there and he actually saw the last launch, the last rocket shuttle launch years and years and years ago. And he still talks about it to this day. It's kind of, he's like, yeah, if I could move to Florida, I don't have any friends there, but I would love to live by NASA. He's like, that's just like his favorite thing in the world. And I think that's kind of a lot of kids' dreams. I mean, how many of us wanted to go to space camp? We just couldn't afford it as kids. How many people want to be astronauts, but either we're too fat or too tall, or, we didn't get into the industry soon enough. I mean, Hannah over here, he might be short enough, but the rest of us are not. And it's just kind of one of those things, like when I look at it and I look at what's going on in the world, the big thing I see is NASA, and we see lots of money not being thrown at NASA, and I kind of wonder why. Why is the government spending billions of dollars killing people when we could be funding, moving to Mars, for fuck's sake? I mean, we could make Doom a reality.
That's not an open-ended question for you or anything. This doesn't put you on the spot and save the entire country's NASA budget. But I mean, what I guess the question would be is just like, what are your kind of thoughts as to with your astronomy, tying it into your book? Like, how can we get the country more interested in like the space race? I mean, the whole country was incredibly involved and interested in going to the moon, and it was like this huge national push. So your book seems to kind of be on that vein, is to try to get people more interested, try to help kids get more education, and just a nice layman's place to get started and really get their grasp. And so that would hopefully evolve into a better understanding and a better interest in NASA. So is that kind of what your book's trying to doing and where you're trying to go from there?
Well, the aim of the book is to really give everybody of about 12 years old and above, those people with basic algebra skills like rearranging an equation and stuff like that, give them the basic mathematical and physics background that allows them to be able to explain the basic properties of our place in the universe and our Earth and our universe that really do point out how incredibly fragile this planet is, how incredibly insignificant we are on the cosmic stage, and how a lot of the stuff that gets force-fed to kids about 12 years old is bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. The Earth is not flat. The Earth is not 6,000 years old. The Earth was not created in 6 days. This stuff's crap. and these kids need to know why. They need to know the truth. It really is an irony, right? Is that what we do, you don't have to be skeptical about it because it really is the truth, and we have the evidence, right? We are right.
Yeah, no, there's no question on that, and that's one of the things that's kind of sad about the world looks to the United States. It's kind of like this I guess modernized, intelligent place where the university is great, and we're seeing this weird turn in the opposite direction when it comes to our children, and we're all afraid that's going to go in the negative direction once they reach education levels and college levels and stuff. So this book that you're working on, you're talking algebra level. So are you going to stop at Newtonian physics? Are you going to work a little bit past Newtonian physics and get into the basics, like the conceptual ideas for relativity, so that you can get the idea of why GPS works and stuff? Or are we going to be talking more like the origin physics and things like that?
No. Much more basic level than that.
Okay.
The basic trigonometry, so starting with the unit circle to show the trigonometric functions, how that is used to determine the sizes of things in the universe, the size of the moon, how that's used to determine the distance to the sun, how that's used to determine the shape of the Earth itself, right? And then basic concepts in physics. So not going into the GMM over R squared stuff, but going into the conservation of energy, right? You can't just put things in and take it away and stuff like that. So, for example, the physics of a star is an example of equilibrium, right? It's an example of two very basic things, gravity and then pressure. And the two things balance one another. The gravity is always going to be there because the mass is there. But the pressure is being supported by the nuclear fusion reactions that are taking place at the center of that star, the energy that's being created. And so just like a car can run out of fuel, so can stars run out of fuel. And that's when the equilibrium ends, right? And in physics, when you've got an equilibrium, the system is stable and the system is boring, right? The real awesome physics happens when you break that equilibrium. Things implode or explode, and that's when people get really excited about this stuff. Yeah. So no, much more fundamental level. There are plenty of books out there that go into the quantum gravity and stuff like that, and those books are fabulous. But I think there's a missing bit of conceptual work that needs to be done. Because for me to pick up a book by Lawrence Krauss or Sean Carroll and start reading that, I mean, I have a PhD in astrophysics, and even I find some of it like
boring.
not necessarily boring, but holy hell! I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the position of somebody who genuinely wants to understand this stuff, but doesn't have hasn't had the opportunity or hasn't had the privilege to be able to take a graduate degree and get that. So what I want to do with the book is for somebody to be able to pick it up, read it cover to cover, and be able to defend themselves against those really obvious things, like showing the Earth isn't flat, the arguments for radiometric dating to show the world is 4.54 billion years old, to show that the Earth isn't the center of the universe, and to show that the universe had a beginning, and all of the evidence and the basic physics behind that. And then all the way through, I'm trying to promote critical thinking as well, because this is just something that isn't specifically taught.
Definitely think that's a great idea. I'm sure Chris is probably vibrating in his chair over there at the idea of having another book like this, because he's got so many kids who would probably benefit from reading something like this. Because that's one of the things that I find is that I have a basic skill set. I have a basic set of skills and tools and stuff that I've learned through college. And so it's really hard for me to kind of remove myself and go back to that lay person understanding. That's what I was thinking that your book would be, is this. It's a way to get that language down to the point where people can understand it who don't have, maybe haven't even finished high school yet, and they're in middle school or something, and they're really starting to get interested in it. But like you said, like even you have a PhD and you jump into a Lawrence Krauss book, and you need a basic set of skills and tools and understanding of certain concepts that you don't get until you get to a certain level. And so when you read that, it could be French, it could be German, it doesn't matter. And so your book's trying to bridge from basic education, pre-K and middle school into people that are interested in this and help them go forward.
Yeah,
that's certainly the aim. And one of the reasons I started doing this was, one of the things I see as a professor at Florida Tech is I see the skill sets that kids are coming into our program as freshmen with, and they are missing these skill sets, right? So there is something missing from the K through 12 curriculum right now that's a little bit distressing, right? You would have hoped that by the 21st century that people coming out of high school would know how to show the world isn't flat, right? If you take the average person, right, and say, prove to me that the Earth isn't flat,
yeah, just empty silence and dead stare.
Right. I mean, yeah, and so being a professor was one of the things that got me going on this. The other one is growing up in the UK. There's not really any pressure to go to church, right? Going to church is more like a hobby in England than it is.
That sounds so good. That sounds so.
Yeah, so you don't have people coming up to you and asking you which church you go to, right? Well, probably some of that is to do with the politeness of people in England, not asking any personal questions at any point in any conversation. But yeah, there's no pressure. But I was brought to church by my parents. They kind of went to have tea with their friends, right? That's what they were doing there.
And a social club.
Yeah, so yeah, they were hanging out. I mean, I get that, right? And I mean, they're nice buildings. They're nice old buildings. They don't need to be air conditioned. There's a pretty good organ in there, So anyway, I was started listening to this stuff, and I was like, oh, these are people are saying some really serious things. They're telling me how to live my life. I better read up. I better do the background. I better read the background literature, see what it's all about. So about the age of 12 years old, and I think this is my first act as a scientist, is I went to read the literature and got about halfway through Genesis, put it down, realized it was all bullshit. and that was it. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is clearly rubbish. You can't make me believe.
Yeah. Lucky you, I grew up believing the canopy theory, which we talked about last week. I grew up actually thinking the canopy theory was a viable option for fucking 13 to 15 years of my life.
I'm a relative non-believer. I never really had anything. I had a Presbyterian and a Judaistic upbringing. My mother and father were different, so I had the different views right up to the beginning. I was like, well, Mom doesn't think that Dad's savior is the savior, and so it was all like I had the contrast from the beginning, and so I never really had any of the church environment and church community. So that I understand that people like that. I don't have any way to like compare or anything, but it's nice to hear that in some more progressive areas. But you guys have a really conservative problem in the UK with certain wings and certain parties. So I remember I think it was Tony Blair who was doing the creationist schools that he was funneling money into and stuff in the UK. And so, I mean, there's still some little pockets of your former home that does stuff like we're having problem with here. So are they doing anything differently there than we are here, like trying to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, it goes backwards and forwards. Like you have changes in governments from liberal to conservative, just like you do over here, right? But we don't have idiots trying to spend $150 million building a ridiculous replica of a boat that would have never floated. Right? We don't have that.
Tax breaks for it?
No, certainly not. Yes. And we don't have billboards on the side of the road with people claiming that women that have abortions are murdering children and things. We don't have that. And so going back to the story of what motivated me to do this, it wasn't until I came to the United States that I realized what a chokehold the religious community has on everyday life over here.
Uncle Sam slapped you with a Bible, huh?
Well, it wasn't in upstate New York. It wasn't that bad, right? But moving to Florida, I was like, holy hell! I've got a way to measure how worried I am about where I am in the world, and that's the church to pub ratio. If there are more churches in the town than there are bars, then I'm worried.
Spoken like a true Brit. That's a great one. We're up in a conservative part of Michigan, and we have some of the highest per capita church concentration areas up here as well. West Michigan was completely won by Cruz in the primaries. So I mean, if that's kind of a temperature gauge to what we're dealing with on this side, Chris has dealt with a little bit more with his family and stuff, and like I said, I hadn't really dealt with it. So I've always loved science. I've always been a big fan of that kind of stuff, but sports and things, and try to understand why a curveball spins in the air and moves with fluid mechanics. And then you mentioned the equilibrium in stars, so thermodynamics. I have really cool books, The Physics of Superheroes, where you have connections to terms, bringing in the new physics and stuff into relativity or ideas that like connect to it. So like here's Superman punching stuff, so now you understand Newtonian physics and stuff. So like your book is doing that with astronomy, and that is awesome because I have never heard of that. I've never seen anybody do something like that. I'm really interested in what you're going to be getting out of this. But I see that your Kickstarter did completely everything you needed as far as I could tell.
Yep. We should be I think we're all set on that. And a big help from the skeptic community after the boost that obviously Seth Andrews gave. So if you look at the funding profile, there's the Andrews bump in the funding profile. So I owe him a few drinks for that one, I think. But
well, one of the things I think you mentioned on his show, and I'll be honest, I love Seth Andrews. He was actually my first introduction into the skeptic world about 3.5, 4 years ago. But for me, the one thing you mentioned was that you're not trying to make money off this. This isn't to make you rich. This isn't for your pocket. You're not trying to buy your kids a fucking Lexus when they turn 16. You're doing this because, A, you love what you do, B, you want to educate people, and C, you even went through and listed the percentages in your Kickstarter of what the money's going to go to. And I don't think I saw profit line in there. So the Underwear Gnomes would be very disappointed from South Park if they saw that. But there's no profit line in there.
Right. Yeah. This was one of the really eye-opening things about being a new person in the publishing arena, right, is that so I've written the book. It took about 2 years to write because I do it in the evenings and at weekends, right? So you got the book written. What do you do then? Well, you try and find a literary agent, right? You try and find a publisher. But everyone I approached was like, you're a new author. You have to self-publish first. So I started looking at the costs of self-publishing, and I'm like, holy crap.
And you're expected to give your book away for like 6 months for free. Just give it away on Amazon. It's a kind of a messed up market.
Right. It worked for Andy Weir with The Martian, but I don't think it's really going to work for just this education book. So, I thought let's put out a couple of chapters for people to read. If they like what they read, maybe they want to essentially pre-order it on Kickstarter, and ended up getting the necessary funds, and it should be printed end of July, early August.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I'm sure we'll definitely. Are you going to be getting any publishing or anything in like brick and mortar stores, or is it going to be like an Amazon only availability book, or what are we looking at there?
I really don't know. At the moment, it looks like I'll have a few, maybe 50 copies left over from the bulk printing based on the demand that we had on the Kickstarter. And right now, I haven't really looked into what to do with them, so I probably just will hand them to Amazon and put them up on Amazon. So that seems to be the easiest way to do it, because they'll take care of, well, the shipping and all of that stuff, and Amazon Prime members will get it cheaper and all that. Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest, I really hope you put some way out for us to buy it, because, for instance, for somebody like me who had not heard about it till I heard you on Seth Andrews, it was kind of like one of those things like, holy shit, you go to a Kickstarter, it's funded. It's like, god damn it. Like, I didn't even get a chance to donate so I could get my damn book. And so, now I'm kind of stuck sitting here going, okay, how are we going to get it? So do you have plans to, even if it's like a pre-order thing, put something on your website that says, hey, you could pre-order this. You may not get it for a year, but here's a pre-order, donate the money or whatever you want to do with the money. And then that way, the rest of us that do want it, or do a book tour, hell, do a damn book tour, and then you can give it away there.
Right. I'm trying to figure this stuff out now. Yeah. So I've got my website up and running, and that's the place that all of this information is going to be. So just check back there, in a couple of months. I'm sure by then I'll have got somebody to build a much better website than the WordPress thing I threw together myself. So yeah, I'm quite happy doing basic WordPressy stuff, but at some point I'm going to have somebody come along and sort out all of the how do you buy stuff through a website things. Right? Yeah, but just check danielbatcheldor.com. It didn't take long for me to come up with that URL.
I bet.
It was available. So yeah, just check danielbatcheldor.com and astronomysavestheworld.com as well. I got that one as well.
Cool.
So they'll all forward to a useful place, hopefully.
Well, awesome. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. We don't want to take too much of your time up. I mean, we could probably sit here. I'm waiting for that bottle of scotch to come out, because we're sitting here and I've got the bottle of Tullamore and just waiting for you to get your bottle out, but we won't hold you up from your wife for too long. So
wait, maybe I can get one more interesting question in here, because this is one that I wanted to go full nerd just for a second with the guy with the PhD. Hawking wrote in the Grand Design, the merging of astronomy and cosmology through supernova discoveries and all that stuff, where we age the universe. But basically, the large associations of people and teams and stuff that are needed for getting anything done, and like the one person who does everything, or the one superstar isn't really known anymore, or it isn't a popular type thing that exists anymore for the pockets or whatever. So we got astronomy and cosmology mixing together. Do you think you're going to have any cosmology or anything mixed into the book as well, or just the specifics just of the astronomy? Because it's a springboard to awareness for this type of thing, but like that mixture between astronomy and cosmology is something that we can't really separate anymore because it's so tied together.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think in the introduction to the book, I point out that astronomy is an all-encompassing subject that includes cosmology and planetary science and things like this. So there is definitely the explanation, the simple explanations for showing the age of the universe, and that the universe had a beginning. And that beginning was, the phrase that's been coined is the Big Bang, and people will attack the Big Bang model, but the Big Bang model is a perfect example of how the scientific method works. We have two pieces of independent information that make a prediction. The prediction is you can see the fireball left over from the Big Bang. We built the instruments to go and find the fireball, and hey presto, the fireball's there. You don't get a better way of proving something really happened by having two pieces of independent evidence making the same prediction and then finding that prediction, right? That would be an open and shut. It's an open and shut case, right? So that's where the cosmology is. We've got the evidence for the expanding universe. I've explained that. I explained the what we call the cosmic abundance of the elements, why there is a 3-to-1 ratio of hydrogen to helium throughout the universe, and both of those things have to have come from a very dense, hot universe in the past. And so, yeah, we do that level of cosmology, but we don't do a universe from nothing type cosmology. I think I mentioned inflation, which is one of the yet to be directly observed explanations for why the universe is so homogeneous, why it looks the same in every direction. But I tried not to go into areas where I know somebody's already written a book about that. There's no point me trying to explain something that's been explained much better by somebody else who's far more expert in it than I.
Well, maybe if we run another segment on gravity, black holes, or something in the future, we could have you back on, because I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of your black hole stuff from all your earlier science, but it's a little bit on the complex side for talking about what you plan on for this book. So maybe in the future we'll talk with you again, and we can learn how you can kick black holes out of other black holes, because that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Yeah, it's not that tricky.
So thank you so much for joining us again, and make sure everybody goes and checks out the website, because this is going to be an amazing book, and hopefully Dan figures out a way to present the book so the rest of us who didn't get in on the Kickstarter can purchase it. And maybe you'll even get in touch with David Smalley and get like an audiobook or something, for the rest of us that spend an hour in the car each way every day.
Yep, an audiobook is definitely one of those things that I'm looking to do as well, yeah.
Yep. So as we close the segment out, and as we say goodbye to Dan, I just want to read a small excerpt from the end of his first chapter. He says this. He says, astronomy truly is to save the world. It must be capable of doing several things. First, it must provide a complete and accurate picture of the mechanisms that pose a clear and present danger to our planet. Second, it must provide realistic solutions to those dangerous mechanics. Third, it must provide a way for our species to overcome our differences and unite for the greater good, i.e., in my opinion, feminism, and make us provide the brightest possible future for the next generations. Finally, it must provide universal emancipation via education so everyone can become aware of and concerned for the challenges we may face and will have to overcome together. Only then can everyone have the opportunity to live happy lives, free from tyranny, totalitarianism, and fear. This is a fairly tall order. It is not just a matter of training people on a list of facts. It is also a matter of training people to apply critical thinking approaches needed when confronted by new claims of evidence. So the question is, how can astronomy achieve this while also bearing the burden of proof? As we discussed and demonstrated in the following chapters, astronomy will unite humanity with a common interest that transcends social, political, and theological differences. It will provide an easy and generally compelling gateway to education, give us an opportunity to know the array of astronomical problems we will encounter, and show us that the possible solutions are not necessarily difficult. They simply require time, money, and determination. Make sure you check out Dan's book, Astronomy Saves the World, and we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Prophetcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics
on the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old Atheist Show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah.
And this is David.
From the God Theory Podcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around through the first 2 segments. We talked about Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and their rallies and the violence inherent in them. We talked about, and with a gentleman named Dan, and I'm not even going to say his last name because Chris has already made fun of me twice tonight for not being able to pronounce
Batcheldor,
his
man.
last.
It's like Satchel, but Batcheldor.
Batcheldor. It kind of sounds like a Harry Potter name. Maybe that's just my
British, man.
my bias. It's
British.
a Harry
Don't
Potter
knock
name.
him on the Harry Potter stuff. He's probably much cooler and much more intelligent than any Harry Potter character.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with you there. You know, I'm not like the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I am going to admit that I do nerd out about Harry Potter a little bit, just not the first 3 books. Anything 4 and on, I do. The first 3 suck. I couldn't even read them. That's how
okay.
bad
So
they
you
were.
liked it when Harry got out of puberty and he started paying attention to the girls again, or something. I don't know. I didn't read any of
the
them.
ones written towards children. That was all.
I saw the first movie. That was it. That was all the Harry Potter I can handle. So
we're going to watch all of them now. So it is a new Cellar Door Skeptic segment. Chris and Chris discuss Hannah's found love for Harry Potter.
Or we could just do a Mystery Science Theater of 18 hours of Harry Potter movies.
We could do that. If we're going to do that, though, we got to create a second show for just that.
Without leaving the couch, diapers and all.
Yeah, well, yeah. There you go. There we go. That's what we could call it. We can call it Adults in Diapers.
I was going to think Harry Potter in the filled diaper or something.
No, we can't do that because after we do that, if it's popular enough, we could keep going and go into Lord of the Rings because it'll be almost the same thing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, enough
tangent.
Enough of the lollygagging here. We're here to talk about anti-GMO rhetoric. There was an article that I read from Julian Sanchez from the Atheist Against Pseudo-Scientific Nonsense, and they have a Facebook page that kind of has picked up lately. And I don't know, maybe it picked up before I discovered it, but it was one of those that I've started to get into. And I liked a lot of, not all of that what they post, but a lot of what they post, because they do go after some of the bullshit that people believe. And we already mentioned Seth Andrews once, so I might as well plug his podcast a second time. Because he recently actually had a show where he had 2 scientists come on and talk about woo-woo science. And they didn't talk a lot about GMOs, but GMOs fit into woo-woo science.
Somewhat. It depends. Some of the paranoia fits into the woo type stuff because there's no scientific basis behind it.
Exactly. There's nothing against GMOs. There's no studies that show GMOs are harmful. The one French study that came out that everybody likes to reference is actually not an anti-GMO thing. It's not even a scientific study. They didn't do it correctly. You can't use it against it.
It's some of the same stuff that I've said about the pesticides in the past when we talk about neonicotinoids and bees having nerve gas injected into their brains to cause them to freak out. There's a lot of bunk out there, and so this article you shared it with me. I wasn't familiar with some of these arguments. Some of the stuff about the size of Monsanto was pretty interesting to me. So we're going to talk about some of the stuff that you hear a lot when it comes to the anti-GMO. When it comes to the science behind whether or not it's legit, or if it's complete bunk science, or it's just the modern myths of some of these massive corporations that are out to take over the world and infect your foods and blah blah blah. So without the start, let's just start working through some of these things that are on this website.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I've heard these, and I'll just admit to the audience, I was anti-GMO before. And Hannah did not have a hand in deconverting me, if you want to call it that. He had nothing to do with this.
I initially had a couple of questions, too. I didn't think it was... I thought I was kind of freaked out at first, too, until I learned a little bit more.
Yeah. There's a podcast called Ask an Atheist out of Washington. And I love the podcast. A very mild podcast. But they were the ones... They actually... Because they actually got to interview Bill Nye. They actually interviewed Bill Nye when he was out at one of the conventions out there. And they interviewed him, and he went on this anti-GMO rant. And they didn't want to call him out and be a dick to him, like to his face, because, I mean, it is Bill Nye, I mean, and that would be kind of weird. But they did address it afterwards. And so I wrote into the show and asked them a couple questions, and they actually addressed my questions right on the show. And it's amazing. And I think I'll post that link in the description because I really genuinely love that show with all my heart. I really love, the show. But the big thing is it helped me bring my attitude towards GMOs different. I was in class at the time, and I was very going off on the science pages about how bad GMOs are, and I kept getting called out, and I kept getting angry because it's like, no, this is wrong. Grab my Facebook activist community. Let's find some way to disprove this bullshit. Blah 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 blah. And we kept going on and on and on. So anyway,
Bill Nye had some switches recently too.
He did.
He got a second edition of his book,
book,
Undeniable, that's
Yes.
coming out. If it's out now, I don't know, but I did a review of it, one of our first episodes, and in it, we already knew that he had decided that he was kind of refuting his ideas initially, and so there's a second edition that was coming out, and I didn't read that one because it didn't exist at the time yet. But it's nice to see that he had changed his perspective there. So we'll see if maybe we can get a copy of it and see the differences that he believes now.
So one of the big things that I used to hear about was Monsanto is a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they loom over the agricultural industry with its GMO seed patience and monopoly on food production. So basically, they're claiming that they're a monopoly is basically what they're saying. And so first off, Monsanto isn't this large, overly massive company. I worked for Steelcase, and Steelcase is a very large company. This company is about $15 billion. Now, I'm not saying that's small. That's not a small company, right? We're not talking about, a mom and pop $300,000 a year organization at all. But we aren't talking about some corporate conglomerate that is so large they're worth trillions and trillions of dollars. They can only affect the industry to a certain percentage, and at some percentage they hit this, and they hit this wall. But as far as corporations go, they're almost the exact same size as Whole Foods.
Yeah, it says that they're only 2% of the $900 billion agricultural industry. So they're important. I mean, they're an important name when it comes to the patents that you mentioned, and they have some monopoly over certain areas. But let's face it, this would be like a Speedway or Citgo trying to take over ExxonMobil. Like, they're a big player in fossil fuels and gasoline and oil, but they're not the ones at the top of the food chain, but they're just the one that everyone knows. It's the name that we have. I don't know how it got so much recognition, but from some some marketing or something, or some viral media, but that's the name that everybody associates with GMO. It's just Monsanto is the GMO king.
Because there was a lot of anti-rhetoric that came out of the organic industry against Monsanto. It was, how do we kill them? Well, they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Let's eliminate them from the face of the earth by talking shit about them. And so that's what they did. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty anti $15 billion corporations. I really am. That doesn't really fit into my my model of how I see corporations working within society.
Well, a company that big is fine if it exists in my perspective. It's when it comes to the antitrust laws in the U.S. Like, if you're violating the antitrust laws in the U.S., like when it comes to monopolies, like if you're monopolizing a market, then you should be adjusted. You should be cut down. Microsoft was cut in half when I was younger because they violated antitrust laws, and we don't see that as much anymore since the most recent economic downturn in 2007. And so Monsanto seems to be this lightning rod of our attention, saying, well, they're so big, they own all these seed patents that they should be cut down and broke down, and they're putting all this money into legal processes so they can get unfair advantages to take over the agricultural world. There's a lot of myths and blah 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 that's out there. Well, like this on the article here, it just basically says that all these seeds are used in large scale farming, and there's hybrids and all kinds of stuff. But long before Monsanto even came onto the scene, all of this stuff was intellectual property and stuff. So they're important. They're a big ass company, but they're not the face of GMO. They're not this evil monster that we need to slay.
And another one of the myths that comes out of this is that they produce extremely toxic herbicide, and they call it glyphosate.
It's glyphosate.
Called Roundup, basically. And they genetically modify crops to be resistant so that they can sell more Roundup. Now, I don't think Roundup's got to have that big of a market value, right? I don't think this. It's not like you can go to door to door, with your Roundup Bible, and you can go, if you would like to know the truth about Roundup, please purchase one of these, and we will show you and demonstrate how this will affect your whole life. I mean, it's not like that. Roundup isn't a miracle cancer-treating chemical, So I have a hard time seeing it as this big thing. But it is concerning, right? People, we should be concerned a little bit. We should be able to go, okay, well, hold on. They're putting weird chemicals that kill off plants in our food. Why? How can they do that? Doesn't that seem like it's going to be very aggressively toxic to the human body?
It doesn't go directly into the foods. They use it to kill everything but the food. Essentially, you have a corn plant, let's say, that's growing in a farm, and you don't want anything else to take any of the nutrients out of the soil. You don't want any of the bugs to dig into the leaves. You don't want anything to harm any algae or any bacteria or anything, things that kill crops. So they put this stuff, Roundup. It kills everything. So they genetically modify the plants, the corn, so that it's resistant to glyphosate. Well, the problem is that glyphosate is really toxic to humans and animals. And so this is where the paranoia is. It's like the plant itself is resistant to these things, so it can survive in an environment with glyphosate. Well, everything else is dying, and so this is bad to have in the soil. It's bad for the ecosystem in the area. It kills off animals, bugs, and things that need to be alive. Because let's face it, you need a completely working ecosystem to keep things healthy in the environment. And so this is some of the stuff that they talk about where they say glyphosate is bad, but they're making these plants resistant to glyphosate, to Roundup, so that they can sell more Roundup. Is a bit of a misnomer, and then the description in this goes it's pretty lengthy. Like it would merit a read if you're really interested in how much damage or how much potential damage Roundup can do.
So how about this? They lost a patent to that chemical in 2002. That's over
for 14
10
years
ago.
It's been generic. So everyone else has been able to make Roundup, and so Monsanto hasn't been this Roundup monster.
And that's the whole point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good for them. They're so you can't say there's some big conglomerate that's pushing Roundup to make more fucking money. Roundup doesn't make that much money anyway, but fucking Monsanto is not the only people that can use that in GMOs.
Maybe the market itself can use glyphosate. So the whole market is pushing Roundup, but not just Monsanto.
Yes.
They're not the super
evil.
And
that's the whole thing. It's not that. Now, the best thing is that they've tested this, right? And it is extremely toxic, but only to plants. It's not toxic to humans. It's not toxic to animals. They don't have some toxic shock that animals go through because they've been exposed to this. It has to be super high levels, and if you look at it, you would be consuming such a large amount of that chemical. You'd be sharing such a large amount of that chemical that of course you would be dead. It would be amazing the amount of chemical that you would have to distribute. And so it's another common myth debunked. And this article goes into quite a bit. They actually go into how much of that stuff and how much of those different things are in what we eat. There's stuff that's toxic, slightly toxic. They put wine in the slightly toxic. And they go through all these different EPA. Guess what's extremely toxic but legal?
Chocolate.
No. Chocolate is moderately toxic on their scale. Oh. Extremely toxic, fucking cigarettes.
That's not a surprise.
Yeah. Extremely toxic. Cyanide that is being produced in certain types of bacteria that is found on plants and used in mining, industrial organic chemistry, and pest control. Organic chemistry.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Yep.
One of the things that they talk about further in the article is just that's a thought experiment. So after they talk about all the toxicity, where these things level, it says that in a 165-pound human would need 150 milligrams of glyphosate per day before he or she would need to start to worry about chronic adverse effects. So essentially, a 165-pound person would need to eat somewhere around 65 pounds of produce every single day. So the GMO foods that we're talking about have a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of this stuff in it. It's just part of the amount that's left over when they clean them, and it's an environmental hazard from having these plants in Roundup or near Roundup. But they would have the amount is so little they would need to eat an astronomical amount of produce every day for the glyphosate itself to be dangerous to people. And so,
and think about it. What does that sound like? That sounds like anti-vaccination
yeah.
bullshit.
Well,
how many times do they want to say, hey, formaldehyde is so horrible for you, Chris? I mean, how many times do they say that? And when you actually look at the numbers of the statistics, if you took all the fucking formaldehyde you get out of a vaccine and took it all at one goddamn time, even as a fucking baby, the chances of you dying from that are like less than 1%.
Oh, they're really, really low. The thing is that when people talk about the weird chemicals and stuff that are in all the vaccinations and in the vaccines, they're in there to control the environment for the vaccine. It's like wrenches and bolts and nuts and screws in a car. Like, these things are in there to control it. So you're not going to get anything crazy out of the vaccines, just like you're not going to get crazy amounts of glyphosate in your produce if it's GMO. There's going to be some there, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to be a problem. And the article here agrees with that.
Some of the other things, and we already kind of talked about it. They say the WHO or the World Health Organization, they list glyphosates as carcinogens to humans. But again, we just went through that. We went through, do they cause cancer? Well, there's no link between it. When they discover a link, fine. Then I'll concede. Until they do, though,
that's the part about
stop
science.
telling us that it is. It's a lie.
That's the great part about science. Right now, there's no correlation. There's no causation. There might be a correlation, but there's no causation. There's no direct cause from the glyphosate in our foods to direct cancers or anything like that. If we find some in the future, guess what? Science can change, and we'll adjust our behavior accordingly. Plain and simple. That's the best part about doing all this kind of research, is we're not getting anything right now. If we do in the future or find something more refined techniques for research, we'll change our perspectives.
Mm-hmm. And as we close this out, before we get into Chris's awesome article, the one of the things that in the last parts is Monsanto created Agent Orange and therefore cannot be trusted. Wait. Vietnam. They created Agent Orange? Seriously? That's who created Agent Orange. So they say a lot of people believe that there could be multiple Monsantos. But hold on. Agent Orange was in fact created by Monsanto along with Dow Chemical. But Monsanto, that made Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, was a chemical company. In 1996, the chemical company Monsanto also happened to buy an agricultural company long after the use and production of Agent Orange. The chemical Monsanto company developed the drug Celebrex, and the company was then purchased by Pfizer. Pfizer had no interest in the agricultural business, so they spun it off, but they kept the company's name Monsanto. And so Monsanto Seed Company that we know today is completely separate from the chemical company called Monsanto.
So by anything like Agent Orange, you would be better off blaming Agent Orange on Dow Chemical than you would on Monsanto, because Monsanto in its original form was kind of this tied up thing with Dow Chemical, and they've just essentially been flipped, tossed, twisted, and turned so that they don't really exist anymore, which doesn't surprise me really, because Dow Chemical, let's face it, there's some weird stuff going on in there. They're very inventive, they're very creative, and they've done a lot of innovative stuff, but not all of it the best in the world.
You know they're creating zombies in there, right?
They're what?
They're creating zombies. Is it like a Resident Evil all over?
I'm not a complete conspiracy theorist, so
you should be. You should be. They're creating zombies, Chris.
Well, if it comes down to it, I'll go find the nearest creepy mansion and I'll go hang out with some zombie dogs. It'll be a good time.
So speaking of zombies and conspiracy theories, right? We got to talk about teaching the controversy, and so this is kind of a topic, I mean, for us it's not. For us, it's a non-topic, I mean, there's no such thing as teach a controversy to me, because there's no fucking controversy with evolution. It's just a media spin word. It's somebody jacking off into a fucking goddamn blog saying read me, and it's like, nah, dude, I don't like that shit. No offense, those that do, good for you. I just personally don't want your jack off, in my literature, and that's what it is. I mean, you're not teaching the controversy, but. So Chris thought it would be great, and I'll let him talk in a second, because I've overpowered him this episode, But he wants to talk about teaching the controversy, because he thinks it's just as ridiculous as I. And at some point, in a satirical way, if we're going to teach the controversy about evolution and creationism, we might as well teach the controversy about everything else.
Oh yeah, it's the whole idea of, okay, well, this is controversial. Well, we should teach the kids all of the possible controversies and let them make the decision on what the best perspective is. Well, when you're in science class and you're teaching the controversies, so you're teaching something that's not genuinely accepted is by the scientific community, then essentially you're teaching them non-science, because if the scientific community doesn't agree with it, then you can't call it legitimate and accurate science. And so evolution is accepted by an overwhelming amount of people. And so if you want to
90%.
Oh yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And so if you want to basically teach the controversy, what you're going to be doing is letting in everything. And so what I'd like to do, just kind of what I did when I talked about the switching over on Pascal's wager, is using their language, what they want to do, to flip it around on them. So like you want to, would these things also qualify for that controversies for kids in school? Would you like to teach them that most scientists agree that it's unlikely there's a single gay gene that determines something as complex as sexual orientation, and that it is more likely to end as a result of an interaction of genetic, biological, and environmental cultural factors? Or if God exists and knows everything and he has the power to do anything, he must have made intentionally homosexuality. The common refutation to this is homosexuality is a choice, but then the refutation to that is that as it follows that you could choose to be gay, right? Well, this is something that most people wouldn't do and most people could not do. Then that's what I usually ask people. So, well, if it's a choice to be gay, then you can choose to be gay for the next half hour and you can go have a sexual encounter in that way. Well, obviously those things are wrong. So that would be controversial. Should we teach the kids those kinds of things? Because they would be controversial. And if you respect that word itself to, a religious person who wants to teach intelligent design. Or what about the marriage can consist of multiple partners? Biblical marriage exemplifies the rife of male-dominated polygamy. Should we teach marriage between a man and woman is good, but also with many women? Like these kinds of things are in the world that they want to teach, but is it they're cherry picking out of science what they want for creationism and design, or will they accept all of the controversies? And that's basically where I flip it to. And this is the area that's weird for me, because I seriously have no idea what some of these people really want besides, hey, I want my perspective in your scientific world, so I'm going to ask you to teach that. So I guess when we talk about something like ID or creationism, something like that, what were you, because you came from this world where like they wanted to teach creationism as opposed to evolution. Did they ever talk about like, oh, we're going to sneak in and bust up the bullshit that is evolution? Oh, their words, of course.
No, honestly, I mean, we lived in a bubble. It was a fucking bubble. I mean, we went to a specific church. There's probably about 20% of my classmates went to the exact same school I went to, and the school didn't talk about that. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was a child, we protested outside of abortion clinics. We did do that.
Did the school badmouth evolution specifically?
Yes. Oh yeah. We were told evolution was bullshit. How about this? I never heard or understood the concept of evolution until I went to high school in a public school. And as much as we want to dog public schools, that's where I heard about evolution.
Damn right.
And I never heard about it outside of the fact that, yeah, they bashed it. It was bashed. Now, you talk about biblical marriage. We never talk about polygamy. That never came up. We talked about it in the sense of, Mormons and how horrible they were. That's what we talked about.
You dogged other Christian, yeah. in scare quotes.
Well, they weren't technical Christians according to us.
Yeah,
we were Baptists, man. If you didn't get baptized, you weren't a Christian. I mean, that's what we believed. We believed you had to be baptized to be a Christian.
Mormons don't baptize at all?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't matter. They believe in Joseph and golden tablets. So, actually, we should have Joseph on. Ironically, we should talk about that again. I really enjoy having Joseph on, and I really enjoyed his Mormon segments. I really do.
Joseph Casper was awesome.
Yeah, I do like that guy.
He still is awesome. He's not like this. Is not like a past.
It's
person.
Not in the past. He didn't die in it, Chris. He's still with us.
Well, I mean, he's in Wyoming, so it's pretty dangerous up there being an out atheist. But either way, back to the topic at hand here. Yeah, we'll try to talk to Joseph in the future because that would be cool. But let's think about the reason I asked about whether or not the evolution was dogged in your schools, because what about the controversy being taught in religious schools? So we are in the evolutionary world. We are the atheists and the agnostics and the scientists who say evolution is correct. If you want to teach your controversy in our schools, how about we teach our controversy in your schools? So we teach the controversial, beneficial, differing topics in religious schools.
Well, they won't let you do that, Chris.
Oh, I know they won't.
That because there's money involved in it. Are you going to pay money to you know what they'll say? They'll say, sure, how much money are you going to give us to come in here? That's what they're going to tell you. They're not going to say, well, yeah, come in here because we want to hear all sides of it. What the fuck would they say that? They're not crazy. They got their biases. They know how to protect it. They know how to keep their money inside.
Well,
they're not gonna do that.
Well, that's basically what they're gonna do. They're gonna block it in any way, shape, or form they can. And so they basically extol negative biases towards scientific principles, and they're grossly misunderstood, often being taught by someone who has never actually had any adequate training in that area. If you imagine a biologist from Liberty University understanding evolution, or a physicist really genuinely understanding the Big Bang Theory, you're gonna run into problems along those lines. We're gonna put a link to a Slate article that talks about creationism and evolution in school, and then religious students they can't learn natural sciences from that. So my intention going from this, just real quick, it's just, what is the solution? In the solution, the only one I can think of, Daniel Dennett has an awesome thing, and he basically says that adding world religions to the public education system, a separate class that would be taught sciences, aside from the sciences, where all religions would be evaluated and thoroughly analyzed. And we had something like this in my school, but it was an elective. You had to choose to take it. But the benefits would include reducing global cultural ignorance, reducing xenophobia, allowing for questions in a safe environment, because let's face it, church and home can be hostile to curiosity, and much more. So there's a link in here where philosopher Daniel Dennett calls for all religion to be taught in schools, and we can understand its nature and its natural phenomenon. And then he takes on The Purpose-Driven Life, which is a book written by Rick Warren, and it claims that the only way to be moral is one must absolutely deny evolution. And so this is a great TED Talk, and it's kind of where this whole thing came from for me. And so I have a little bit about the dialogue and stuff that we would run into, like teachers saying, well, really? Sure? Okay. How about you explain yourself to the student who questions it? And forcing the student really to just, for the first time in their life ever, actually explain themselves, as opposed to just extol the rhetoric their parents gave them. And I think this would be beneficial to kids and anyone getting an education in the future.
Yeah, and I would agree. I'm not against world religions. I'm only against world religion classes when they're cited, and you're going to get biased.
Well,
I don't
there's no
disagree
way around
with
that. Yeah,
you can't get away from that. I mean, if I taught a world religions class, you'd be kind of like, well, Chris, Professor Chris, or Teacher Chris, why are you against all these religions? Like, you haven't said a positive thing about any of them.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll be at least consistent on that. I'll say shit about every fucking religion, but you're not going to get away from all the biases, and I agree that we should be teaching world religion in middle school or high school, and I think it should be mandatory. I personally do, because, like you said, it does reduce xenophobia. It does reduce ignorance, and personally, I come from a background where I have a very hard time with Christianity. I really do. There is a Sunday Assembly, great group. If you're listening to this and you want to enjoy Sunday Assembly in Grand Rapids, head over to it and message me. I'll send you the links. I can't go to it right now, personally, and maybe one of them will listen to this and call me out, but I tried to help. It was actually started by a lady named Susan, and she has one in Detroit that she helps run. She's a big advocate of Sunday Assembly.
We saw her at the conference for American.
We did 2 years ago. Yep.
She was awesome.
She's a great lady, and her and I talked quite a bit, and I just said, this is just not for me. I can't do this. But I had a friend that I met through Jennison for Love, and his name will remain nameless in case we ever get popular. I don't want to call him out because he's a closeted atheist. He is, and he is a homosexual. And I was in his wedding for when he married his husband. Love the guy to death. He's a former Baptist minister. We have a lot in common. But he was telling me, about how he likes some of that atmosphere. He enjoys that. He enjoys the preaching. He enjoys the singing. Well, he actually took up the mantle and helped start Sunday Assembly. He's the one. If anybody besides Susan gets credit, this individual gets credit. And more power to them. Good for them. it's not for me. I still have some sort of a PSTD from religion. I really have a hard time. I do not like the singing. It really bothers me to the point where I get upset. Like, I actually genuinely, and I don't know why I feel upset, because they're just singing, and they're singing secular songs, things I listen to on the radio, dude? But it bothers me. It really bothers me, and I have an extreme anxiety. I haven't gone to one. I didn't go to their opening. I haven't gone to either of the months. And our friend Jeremiah Bannister even spoke at one of them. And I love Jeremiah. I love seeing him speak. He's a great speaker.
His daughter spoke too, didn't she?
What's that?
Did his daughter speak at one of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, she didn't speak at that. She kind of did. Yeah, he had her up with her towards the end.
But no, those things are awesome. And like I've never been part of any kind of those religious communities. I've experienced them to a certain degree. I've gone to a couple of church services here and there. I've gone to the synagogue with my parents and grandparents, participated in the Judaistic whatever. I have no interest in that. I tried to go to the Center for Inquiry's meetings once a week on the weekend just to do just to participate. I can't do it. I can't. I have too much going on in my life. I have too many things going on.
And you'd rather come sit here with me.
I can't. Yeah, this is more productive to me. This really is more productive, and these kinds of things. I just sitting around, maybe meeting people here and there, but I would prefer to do something where it's just creating something, doing something. It just seems like sitting around and meeting with people just never really floated my boat. Never the community stuff. It just isn't something that I really need, and so I've never really been interested in it. But for people who need it, more power to them. That's awesome stuff. But like the tie-in with the education stuff, like I've never had any kind of mixture with that, so it just doesn't match for me.
And so as we wrap up, you're right. Should we be teaching the controversy? You would think that as much as they scream, teach the controversy, teach this, teach that.
Teach what's controversy to them.
They would accept on their side that they need to also teach their controversy or the ones that contradict them. And Dan Dennett's right. And I like Dan Dennett. I do. I enjoy a lot of his work. I really have. And I'll be sad when he leaves this earth. But he brings a great point home. And he says the dialogue would force the students to use reason and rationality to analyze the religions and to understand all the different aspects of life. And without that, we don't have anything. And I've told my kids before, let's research other religions. You don't be an atheist. Let's
you don't
do
have
this,
to.
My one kid goes to Sunday. He teaches Sunday school. I have one son that helps his grandmother teach Sunday school, and I don't think he enjoys it. Honestly, I think it bothers him, but he does it for his grandma. But we've had discussions before, and he says, I'm not going to have this conversation with you because it makes me uncomfortable. Well, why does it make you uncomfortable? Well, it makes me uncomfortable because I don't want to upset anyone. It's almost like he wants to fit in, and that's okay. And I told him that. I said, if you believe this, and this is genuinely what you believe, that's fine. You get to listen to me as your controversy. And you know what? And I said, hey, son, and on the opposite side, you can be my controversy. You can teach me things and talk to me things. I haven't set foot in a church in 2 years. It has been 3 years now. It's been 3 years since I physically set foot in a church. I don't step foot in a church. I don't do it. And I told them that, but you're more than welcome to bring these conversations home and talk to me. And I'll tell you what, I won't tell you you're wrong ever. Ever in my life, I will not tell you you're wrong about philosophy and religion. Unless you're harming somebody, then I will.
You just tell him he's wrong when he says he doesn't want to pick up his clothes and stuff all the time.
yeah, exactly. Yes, I'll tell you you're wrong when you don't pick up your clothes. But I do that on purpose because I would rather you have him have a well-rounded religious system support network so he can make those decisions. So he can decide, you know what? I don't want that certain support network. I don't want that ideology. I want a different support network. I want to work towards humanist standpoints. And that's my thing. If you don't give them options, if you don't teach them the controversy, if you want to call it that, at some point, they're not going to know.
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to discern it.
There's got to be more than one option. You've got to give them all the options and really leave them the decision. It has to be up to the child. And when they become an adult, that's the thing. Like you force them to make the decision when they're a kid, and that's what makes me uncomfortable. I'm a new father, and I'm thinking about what and how, and I'm trying to learn more about Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, so I can put out all of the perspectives. I want all of that stuff to be out there. And then if my daughter wants to go to churches, I'll go with her. We'll go. But
don't take me, because you'll regret that.
I know. It's just, well, the thing is, like, her family wants to do baptism. Like my wife's family wants to do baptism. That could be something we could talk about in a future show. Is, you know, new parents, godless parents, and whether or not baptism, you know, things along those lines. So, like, all of those kinds of things, dealing with stuff in the future and making decisions for the kids, or letting the kids make their own decisions, stuff is important. And like teaching this controversy stuff, they need to be taught everything. But let's face it, the religious classes don't need to be in the science classes, and that's where it's not a controversy. There is no controversy.
No, you're right.
And so it's a philosophy question, and so they can be all taught in a philosophy class and a religion class, but they can't be taught in a science class, because the scientific method immediately refutes, invalidates, and destroys any religious community, any religious perspectives.
And that's all Rick Warren's trying to do, right, dude? That's all he's trying to do is revisionist. He's a revisionist, right? Yeah. We're going to revision science. You're not going to fucking revision science. Get the fuck over yourself. If you don't fucking understand science, just say, I don't understand it. Or say, hey, my faith trumps science. That's fine. We can accept that. I don't agree with you, but we can accept it.
Well, he tries to say that you can't be moral without completely denouncing evolution. And
that's just stupid.
It's an ugly, slippery slope. And Daniel Dennett does a great job refuting it and basically breaking it apart. It's a nice, calm. Daniel Dennett doesn't do incredibly angry, wild, irrational statements. He does everything as a philosopher and a thinker does. And so I highly recommend checking out the TED Talk. It'll be linked in our description box, and so you can check it out. And I mean, that's pretty much all I really wanted to go into on this. This isn't that complicated of a topic, and we can't really take it much further than this. Unless anybody's interested in talking with us further, they can contact us on Facebook, on Google+, they can contact us on Pinterest. Just search for Cellar Door Skeptics, and the Googles will take you to a place where you can find us. And that's basically where we are with this topic for now.
And so as we wrap up and we close out the show, thank you all so much for sticking around. We had a great time tonight talking with a NASA scientist, talking about teaching the controversy, and how Chris is going to go home and teach his daughter every religion possible. We talked about Trump and Sanders debates, and I guess not their debates, their fights. And we talked about how Chris has decided he's become anti-GMO, and he's only going to eat organic food for the next month. And we'll see if he's healthier. A new scientific experiment.
I'm going to be green like cauliflower broccoli.
There you go. So make sure you stick around, because next week we have another amazing episode planned. We have more awesomeness on the way. And, you know, we might even talk about crazy shit Chris used to believe. But the big thing we're going to talk about next week is we got an article called Reasons Atheists Convert to Christianity. Because I bet everyone listening thinks that there's a lot of atheists that convert.
Oh, man.
So make sure you stick around. Come back next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be here with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much, and have a great night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.